I'm going to share with you very, very powerful experiments. They're all peer-reviewed. These experiments are going to tell the story. So I'm going to begin the first experiment. Experiment number 1. This was performed in 1992, Russian researchers, Russian physicists, and it was published in the Bulletin of the Lebedev Physics Institute, 1992. It tells us that the stuff we're made of communicates with the stuff that the rest of our world is made of. DNA speaks to the field. So let me describe the experiment like this. Researchers took a vase, a closed vase, closed on both ends, glass tube. They took all of the air out of the tube and created what we call a vacuum, implying that there's nothing in the tube. Well, we know that there may not be any physical matter, but there's still something in the tube, and what is in there are photons, photons of light. So that's no secret. The first part of the experiment was to detect where the photons were in that tube that we knew were in there. And this is what the experiment showed us, that the photons are completely random in that tube. You know, scientists didn't know if they'd all pile up at the bottom or stick to the sides or floating in there. They're completely random. No surprise, totally expected. So this is the baseline. All right, now the next part of the experiment. Next part of the experiment, scientists took human DNA and they placed it into the tube and took all the air out again. And then they measured to see what influence the DNA had upon the photons in the tube. Now think about what this means based on what we just described. Our physical world, our bodies, are made of atoms that are made of these photons of light. And conventional wisdom tells us we have little, if any, influence over the world around us or the world within us. So for these scientists to ask the question, what is the effect of the DNA upon the stuff the world is made of? What is the effect of the stuff we're made of upon the stuff the world is made of? And to have this answer, what happened, and you're seeing it on the screen, is that in the presence of the DNA, the photons were no longer random. They followed a pattern from the DNA itself. They became ordered in the presence of the DNA. This is a mind blower. We're not supposed to have, our stuff is not supposed to have any effect on that stuff. Now, I want you to see the way this was written in the professional journals, because the languaging is very telling. First of all, it said that the light was described as behaving, quote, surprisingly and counterintuitively. Intuition says those photons should still be random. So it's counterintuitive that they would become ordered in the presence of the DNA. But then look at this next statement. It says we are forced to accept the possibility. It doesn't say, hey, look what we found, look what we discovered, look what we observed, look at this curious effect. It says we are forced to accept the possibility that some new field of energy, well, we know it's not new, it's always been there, we're just recognizing it, that some new field of energy is being excited by the DNA. It is called the phantom DNA effect. That is the name of the effect that we're seeing here. It was published in the journal Nanobiology, 1995. All right, so what did we just do? What does this experiment tell us? That human DNA influences the stuff our world is made of. All right, that's a big deal all by itself, but this experiment is not done in a vacuum, although it was about a vacuum. The experiment is within the context of other experiments. So check out the second experiment. Experiment number 2, paper released 1993. The title of the paper sounds very complex. It's actually very simple. Local and non-local effects of coherent heart frequencies on conformational changes of DNA. What this experiment is telling us, scientists know that DNA in the human cell, it doesn't just lie there in one position. Okay, I mean, that's the way it's portrayed and we think of it that way, but the DNA is actually very, very mobile, and it is constantly moving and shifting position in response to a number of factors. That is epigenetics. It can be external environment, internal environment, thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs, temperature, nutrition, diet, exercise, all those things. What this experiment is showing is that the heart produces frequencies that change the shape of the DNA, and the ability of the DNA to express fully is determined by its shape. All right. So the heart is producing effects that determine whether or not that DNA can express fully. We are creating the effects in the heart that are creating the frequencies that are having that effect. All right. So here's the experiment. Here it is right here. And by the way, this was published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, 1994. That's why I wanted to put the all of the references there so you can see them. So this study was done, the Institute of Heart Math participated in this. 1993 is when the experiment began. It was published in 94. And what scientists wanted to know was what effect does the human heart, the frequencies of the heart, have on DNA? They had pristine DNA they took from umbilical tissue. So it's very pristine, it's not damaged, it's not aged, it's not deteriorated. They isolated that DNA in a tube within a tube. They allowed that tube to be in proximity, close proximity to the heart. It was in the same room. And when individuals trained in heart-based emotion, they were They were feeling in the presence of heart-brain harmony, all right? They were creating emotions of love, appreciation, gratitude, compassion, positive emotions. And look what happened. In the presence of love, appreciation, gratitude, compassion, the DNA expanded. Now, that's important because when the DNA relaxes and expands, it is allowed full expression of all of the genes that are in that segment of the DNA. All right. So what we're saying is this DNA can express completely and healthier, in a more healthy way, in the presence of these emotions. What happened in the presence of negative emotions like anger, hate, jealousy, rage? Well, it's just the opposite of what you'd expect. Look at what happened in those negative emotions. The DNA contracted. It wound itself up so tight that it was not able to fully express. And this is why when we find ourselves in prolonged experiences, unresolved anger, hate, jealousy, rage, it affects our health because the DNA cannot express fully. So this experiment is very key unto itself because it's telling us, and here's what we saw, quote, individuals trained in feelings of deep love and appreciation, now listen to this, were able to intentionally change the shape of the DNA. That is a powerful, powerful statement. It means that we have the ability as masters of our own self-regulation through the choice of the feelings and the emotions that we have in our hearts. Our job is to self-regulate those feelings and emotions. As we master those, we can actually change the shape of the DNA in our cells and regulate our own health, our own wellness, our own youth, our own longevity, all of these things and much, much more. So this is the result. Human emotion, I love this, produces effects which defy conventional laws of physics. What's that mean? It means you and I are only bound to the conventional laws of physics of this world if we choose to remain bound to those laws. Through our hearts, we may transcend the effects of time and space. And we've seen this. Mystics, yogis, monks, nuns, shamans, curanderos, they've all done these things that appear to us to be mystical, and we feel like only people with special abilities can do them. What we used to think of as extraordinary, I now believe are ordinary abilities that we simply have forgotten. These experiments are showing us. So what did we just do? What do these experiments tell us? Here they are right here. First experiment showed that emotion changes the DNA in the body. Emotion changes the shape of the DNA. I'm sorry, that was the second experiment. The first experiment showed us that DNA changes the way that matter organizes itself in our physical world. So emotion changes the DNA changes matter. If you take out the middle step, what we're saying is emotion changes matter around us and within us. That is a very, very powerful, soft, internal technology from a highly advanced, technologically sophisticated being that we call human. This is the stuff that we stand to lose if we give our power away to the machines, if we give our power away to the technology. And this is why I feel so passionate. At least let's understand what it means. Let's embrace our deepest truths, the deepest truths of our power before we give it away so that we know what it is we're giving away. And my sense is once we really get who we are, we're not going to want to embrace that technology on such a deep level. So before I leave this module, I'm just going to invite you in your own life. I'm going to ask you to ask yourself, this field is a reflection of what we're feeding it. What do you feed the field every day of your life? What do you feed your mirror neurons every day of your life? What is the image that you have of yourself? How do you think of yourself? In your mind's eye, do you focus on what you perceive as your imperfections, which are actually the things that make you so unique and perfect in life? And if you do, who told you they were imperfections? What was your unit of measure? What was the yardstick that you compared yourself to be able to identify what you call an imperfection in your life? It's not right, wrong, good, or bad. It's something you can be aware of. And once you're aware of it, if you do not like what you're feeding the field or those mirror neurons, now you know where to begin the change. We can create brand new patterns in our lives from doing precisely these things. I want to thank you for taking the time to spend this time with me. I'm looking forward to exploring this with you. Technology, consciousness, and evolution, the new human story. There is a new human story that is emerging, and I've shared with you the components. Let's bring it all together in this next module, see what it means in our lives, and how we can apply it. We look forward to next time. Thank you so much. Good access.